Simon Merced, and this is Crave. It's a podcast and a webcast. What do we say? Videocast.
I don't read the scripts like
What we're here to do is talk about entertainment, anything from music to movies, anything that's been entertaining myself and Steve McCabe lately.
Absolutely, and this week, no kidding around, no joking, because we're about Joker. Now there's not as I just said to you before, the lightest of light entertainment, but it has. I mean, I think it's fair to say that unlike other things we'll be talking about today, it's kind of split opinion, hasn't it?
Absolutely.
I think you and I are fairly closely agreed on Joker.
But it's a good one to talk about, and it's like it's serious, but is it serious?
Oh no, it's serious. It's definitely serious. We shall dissect this one.
We shall. Another
dissect
serious question for you: can a concert work if the sound quality isn't that crash hot?
Right.
That was the question. The answer is if the band is Postmodern Jukebox. Yes. Isn't that interesting?
Well, I want to hear the explanation. I want to hear the justification for that. Now, if you're going to be a podcast listener, so those of you watching right now, guys, download the podcast. I've been having a chat with Steve Hackett from Genesis. Absolutely, very, very interesting chap. He's coming to New Zealand next year.
Fantastic. And then another question: if the book is good, does that mean the film is good? And we're applying that to a film called The Goldfinch.
It very, very rarely necessarily follows.
I know.
But we shall come to these. We shall.
But Steve, let's start with this film. It's captured a lot of attention. It's divided a lot of opinion. It's a standalone film.
Yes, it is.
It's telling the origin of the notorious Batman villain, Joker.
Yeah.
The Joker. And he's been around in the comic books, of course, for decades.
Exactly, yeah.
And on screen, you go back to I can remember the 60s, there was that campy TV series.
Oh, Lordy, yes.
Cesar Romero played the Joker.
Yes.
You move forward to the film versions and the Tim Burton versions. Jack Nicholson played the Joker.
Yep.
And then, of course, in more recent times with Christopher Nolan's trilogy of Batman films, famously Heath Ledger won an Academy Award.
His last classic role, yes.
As the Joker. So here we are with Joaquin Phoenix and a new director, Todd Phillips, giving us a whole film. Whole film focusing on the origin of Joker.
And you say it focuses on the origin of Joker. Is there a single scene that doesn't have Joaquin Phoenix in it?
I can't think of one off the top of my head.
There can't have been many, can there?
The film is him.
Yes.
And I just want to let's start with this. When you walked out, what were you thinking?
Well, oddly enough, before I went in, bought my ticket at the cinema. It was an early morning showing, so it's like 10 a.m. And I went and bought myself a cup of coffee. And the young lady behind the counter said, "Are you here for Joker?" And I said, "Yeah, obviously." I said, "Have you seen it?" And she said, "No, not yet." So she said, "Let me know what you think on the way out."
Okay.
So on the way out, I wanted another cup of coffee, so I went back to the same coffee counter, and she said, "What do you think of it?" I said, "I'll let you know in about 3 days."
That's okay.
I think it's going to take me that long to to digest it.
Yes.
So for it to percolate and simmer, and for it to try and for ideas to form, because there is so much going on in this film.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, this is you have to kind of remind yourself that this is a comic book character from time to time, because this is a very dark, serious, intense reading of how this character, who, when we meet him later on as a fully fledged criminal, is a manic sort of man who in charge of a criminal gang who just seems bent on mayhem. How do you get to that state? And this film really investigates the deterioration of someone's mental health and explains it. And you see this unfold in great detail and graphic detail in the performance of Joaquin Phoenix. As you say, Steve, he completely occupies the film, and the storytellers take us back in time and I think relatively slowly unpeel the layers of explaining where this mental unwellness came from. So that you start off right at the very beginning of the film. He's getting some counselling.
Yeah.
So we know straight away this guy's not well.
Yes.
And as the story develops, we get these clues about what happened earlier on in life. And it's not I would say I found it was a disturbing film to watch.
Yes, it was, because it presents a picture of this character whose name is, let's just remind ourselves, Arthur Fleck.
Yeah,
and he lives with his mother Penny, played by quite beautifully by Frances Conroy, and they have a relationship which I have seen compared to the central relationship in Psycho.
Yeah.
Not completely unreasonable. And he does, to a degree, we won't go into too much detail here, but he clearly straddles the reality and the fantasy world very, very slightly. There's one moment with one particular relationship that you think is starting to emerge, and you're going, hang on, that makes no sense. And then the rug is pulled out from underneath you.
Yes.
So he's clearly a very deeply troubled individual.
Yeah.
Turns out he's one of the reasons why he's as troubled as he is because he's doped to the eyeballs on medication, which he possibly doesn't need, but it's never quite made clear. And he and his mother have a fixation on a TV host.
They do. And the mother has this parallel fixation.
Yes.
On the father of Bruce Wayne.
Yes.
So there is that. You're right, and of course that's another big talking point of the film. The talk show host is played by Robert De Niro.
Yes, and what's the character's name? Murray Franklin.
Yeah, and a lot's been made of the fact that here we have De Niro playing a character in a movie that in some ways is very similar to a famous Scorsese film, The King of Comedy.
Yes,
in which De Niro in that film played more the Arthur Fleck type character. And I think it's been acknowledged that that's quite deliberately done.
There's no attempt. I mean, the fact that they've got Robert De Niro.
How can you not go there?
Because he's by far the heaviest hitter in terms of Hollywood celebrity. He's by far the biggest name in the film. So there's no way that happened because nobody else was available. Yeah, they obviously picked De Niro to get the echo. Also, I mean, I've seen echoes of comparisons with Taxi Driver as well.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So De Niro, even though he's not the De Niro of those films, he's very definitely a more avuncular, although there's clearly a bit of a cynical edge to him as well. We won't go too deep into this because that relationship is very pivotal in the film.
Yes, but I think that by doing that, it brings out this feeling in the film and in the story of Joker being this outcast.
Yes.
Being someone who society doesn't accept, doesn't really understand, which is that taxi driver type role, but actually also the King of Comedy role as well. And at the same time, and this is part of the arc of this story, is how through Arthur Fleck's actions, those actions begin to resonate in a city with it wreaked by deep divisions between the haves and the have-nots.
Yes, very much so.
And so you have this sort of this tension, and some people actually latching on to Fleck.
Yes.
I would say later, like you, I had to digest this some days later, and later on, that aspect of the story got me thinking a bit more, and I was wondering how realistic, or not realistic, it's hard, you can't use the word realistic when you're talking about a comic book movie, can you?
How plausible.
Plausible. And that's a good talking point, because hey, if you look around the world, we see mass movements all the time.
Yes, of course.
And they're not always necessarily irrational, or sometimes they are, and sometimes they're not.
No, and oftentimes they're looking for a nucleus to coalesce around. And if you think about this, there's one particular very, very significant episode on the subway.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Which then causes the unrest that's fermenting within Gotham to start to coalesce around Arthur.
Yes.
Even though he never looked for that, he never wanted it. It's almost like Brian in Life of Brian. Now that's a comparison we weren't expecting.
No, okay.
But it's that kind of thing where he was never looking for the celebrity. He was never looking to lead a movement, and yet he very, very clearly does.
Well, I'm just thinking about that, Steve. He had this fantasy of being a success. I don't think this spoils the story for our
well, I know where you're going, and the character's called Joker.
Yeah, he has a fantasy of being a stand-up comedian.
Exactly. So,
in that sense, he has this idea that he can be a public figure, if you like.
Yes.
But it develops in a way we don't expect.
No.
Yeah.
So what you've got at the heart of it then is Joaquin Phoenix spending a terrifying amount of the film with his shirt off.
Yes, let's talk about that.
I mean,
what did you make of that?
Well, I assume that was not entirely done in post. I'm assuming that was him on an extreme diet.
I think I've heard him talk about that in an interview.
Yeah.
And that's so it's kind of he's stripped bare.
Yeah.
He looks undernourished,
sinewy and wiry.
And I couldn't help but notice. I don't know whether Joaquin Phoenix has suffered an injury to a shoulder earlier in his life or a collarbone. One of the shoulders looks a little bit funny, not quite in sync with the other. But and it added to the sort of the sense of a broken man or someone broken down by society.
You could always imagine he probably dislocated his shoulder for the film. To be fair, because in that regard, it's a terrifyingly physical performance.
It is. He's the character. There's an explanation of where the character's laugh comes from.
Yes.
It's cackled and uncontrollable.
Yes.
So you're right. It's physical. It's intense beyond belief.
Yes.
And I found it gripping. I found it. Yeah.
So did his character ever tip over into caricature? Did it ever get too much?
Well, I think that this is where some of the later criticism of the film has emerged.
Yes.
That it does do that.
Mm-hmm.
I can see how you could think that, but he is such a larger than life character to begin with.
Yes.
In the world of comic books and graphic novels, and in an unreal world of Batman and his villains anyway.
Yes.
That's one of the tricky things about this film, actually, Steve, that if you can watch this film, and for large parts of it, the fact that it is based on a superhero villain seems... Your mind's not going there because it's such a gritty depiction.
Yeah, well I mean, the arc that we have to go in his, not just in this film, but the overall arc of, like you said, back in the 60s, and you got the Adam West.
Yeah. Cesar Romero.
That's the one, yeah.
Yes.
And it was high camp, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
And as well as Batman and Robin being high camp, so obviously were the Riddler and the Penguin and, of course, the Joker.
Yes.
And they were absurd. And they were meant to be absurd.
Yes.
And it's only in much more recent years when we've had the likes of, what's his name? Michael Keaton,
yes.
For example.
Yes.
It's only when we've had these guys playing the Batman that they've tried to make it darker and tried to turn him into the Dark Knight. This used to be a cartoon character. But also, he's never been a superhero. He's never had powers.
Yes.
He's always been a real man he relies on technology to do this.
And his wealth.
Well, yes, exactly, which funds the technology.
Yes.
And so as a result, his villains don't have powers. His villains are much more grounded and rooted. So as a result, you've got a much more real person.
Yeah.
And that's what he's depicted as being utterly human and very, very flawed and broken as a human. And that's who he is consistently all the way through the film.
Yeah.
And so you have this very, very broken man who suddenly discovers, again, with that one subway incident, which we shall not dwell on in too much detail, but it's quite pivotal in the story. He suddenly discovers that he has agency in his own life.
Yes.
In a way that he never realised he could have.
Yeah.
Because that episode follows what looks like what's going to be the last straw in his downfall. If you remember the hospital scene, looks like that's going to be where everything's going to collapse, and then suddenly this is where he sort of starts to emerge as something powerful.
It's almost like some sort of a twisted butterfly emerging from a cocoon.
There you go. I'll go with that. Yeah, I like that.
The serious. It's an interest. I can see why that's been so divisive, because you could just laugh it off and say it's so ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Terrible things happen in the world. You know what I mean? I mean, you could. It's outrageous in one. It builds to a point of an awful act of violence, which the story allows this act of violence to become a catalyst for Joker going to an even bigger or higher level of awareness in the public mind. But maybe that's not so outrageous if you apply apply your mind to what else is going on in the world in recent times. Well, maybe that's not
and
so
just to mention that one scene, we're trying to avoid spoilers here,
Yeah.
but there is a very, very shockingly violent scene.
Yes, it is.
And what's astonishing about it, in my opinion, was I was watching that scene thinking, "Oh dear Lord, I know what's coming."
Yeah.
Oh no, it's coming. And even though I knew, I could tell,
Yeah.
it was still shockingly shocking.
It was.
When it happened.
It was. And you're right. And the initial act of violence...
Yes.
...is followed up by another one. I mean, the incident involves not just one action being taking place. I'm being a bit cryptic.
I understandably,
but I guess the point was that the Joker character at that point had crossed some line where consequence no longer mattered.
Yeah.
So it was... So I think... if you've been a fan of the campy 60s programs, this may not be your cup of tea.
No, the evolution is astonishing, isn't it?
But if you've enjoyed the Christopher Nolan take on these characters, I think there is some sort of a progression. It's deeper and darker still, but there's not many light moments in this film at all. But I found it impactful.
Yes.
And extremely thought-provoking and disturbing and quite chilling, but compelling.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Yeah. So I mean, if that's your cup of tea, I'm recommending it, but it may not be everyone's cup of tea.
Yeah. So I thought the best thing you say is, if you like that sort of thing,
that's true.
Then you'll like that sort of thing.
That's absolutely true.
There's not. I mean, seriously, like you say, it's going to split opinion. So listen, should we go to music for a second?
Yes, shall we do that?
You went to the concert last night, didn't you?
I did.
You went to see Postmodern Jukebox.
Yes.
Regular visitors to our show.
Very regular.
As we discussed with... what was her name? I had this queued up. This is absolutely embarrassing. This is... I mean, you know what? Aubrey Logan.
Uh-huh.
Who we spoke to on Crave a few months ago, talking about the visit that was coming up, and she was excited to be here.
Yes.
So tell me, were they worth seeing?
Yes. And Aubrey Logan is incredible.
Yeah.
Her voice and her range and her power are amazing.
Well, actually, I'm going to rephrase the question. Were they worth seeing, or were they worth hearing?
Okay.
There we go.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
I don't. On that note, I'm having a biscuit while Simon tells us about Postmodern Jukebox.
The hard truth of this is that this was a fantastically entertaining band, and by evening's end, they completely won over the audience. But to do that, they had to overcome significant problems with the sound.
So what was the issue? Was it unclear? Was it too loud? What was
I should say that I was very fortunate to get tickets very near to the front.
Right.
And Postmodern Jukebox consists of a band and we're rotating vocalists throughout the show.
Right, yeah.
And they're doing these sort of 20s jazzy style renditions of well-known songs.
Right, yeah.
Lots of pizzazz, and we'll get to that. But especially in the first part of the show, when the singers, especially the female singers, were belting it out, I could not really pick up the lyrics at all. They just got lost in the mix.
Oh dear.
And part of the way through the first set, I thought, well, is this just me? Is my hearing playing up? And I checked with the concert goers on either side of myself, and they too said, no, this is hard. We're not really hearing what they're singing. There was an intermission.
Yep.
I did a quick little survey, and I checked with a couple of people further back.
Yeah.
One couple said it was all right, but two or three others said, no, we're struggling here.
Yeah.
And then one of my fellow concert goers sitting next to me kindly showed me a Facebook post of someone who they'd been in contact with, who'd been at the same venue, seeing the same band the year before, sitting in almost the same place, complaining of the same thing.
Oh, that's not good, is it now?
So that's particularly disappointing.
Time for a new sound engineer?
Well, something. But having said all that, I think that after the intermission, there was a noticeable improvement. So maybe there were, and in fact, one of the complaints, someone called out a complaint at the end of the first song. Someone up in the balcony right near the front actually called out, we can't hear anything.
Oh dear.
And to their credit, the MC of the band said, oh, okay, thanks for letting us know. We'll see if we can fix that. Well, and
then probably didn't.
Well, I think eventually in the intermission they must have been able to do some tweaking. So I've got to put that on the record, and it's a great shame, and it did detract, especially in the beginning of the concert. But I also have to say that this is a very, very accomplished, inventive, energetic, passionate, and creative bunch of performers.
Right.
And people absolutely enjoyed it by the show's end. There's absolutely no doubt about that, as did I.
Yeah.
And if there was an opportunity to see them again, especially if I knew that it was in a venue where the sound could be well controlled, I would absolutely see them again.
Fair enough.
So it's that kind of, I'm saying two things in the same breath there, Steve.
No, I know where you're going with this.
Yeah.
So tell us about the music. You say it's jazz?
Well, it's not just jazz. It's swingy and jazzy, soulful at times. You've got... so they're taking a mixture of songs, some of which I was familiar with and some I wasn't. Like Elton John's Benny and the Jets.
Oh, yeah.
That Aubrey sang. Completely reinvented that. The showstopper for me, and I think for a lot of other people, was a song sung by a guy called Casey Abrams, who's mainly the MC, but also sang, and he did a fantastic version of Creep.
Radiohead?
Is it Radiohead? Yes, it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that was wonderful. David Simmons Jr. is another standout singer from the band, and he did a great version of "Don't Let Me Down." That was really, really good. So there was some, and this band, the cast is changing all the time between songs. Aubrey does this wonderful thing where she belts out a vocal, pauses, does a cartwheel, as you do, picks up a trombone and does a trombone solo.
It's just showing off at that point, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely. And there's lots of other physical acts going on and almost slapstick in a way.
Okay.
They're running up and a couple of times they go up into the balconies and play their instruments up in the balcony with the audience, that type of thing. And you've got also, I should mention, Demi Remick, who is a tap dancer.
Oh.
And boy, she can dance, and she comes on quite often from time to time and helps illustrate some of the songs. So there's a lot going on, a lot of high energy. They did very well to play to the audience. And in the show that I was there last night, there was a father with a young daughter, maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5, maybe even. And she was really getting into it. And many times the band would come over and gesture to her and come down and give her a high five or whatever. Nice. So they play to the audience very well.
So you get the feeling they actually enjoy doing what they're doing.
Yes, absolutely. I think for me, Aubrey and David were, for me, they were a bit above the others in vocal ability. Yeah. But altogether, really, really good. And it would have been so much better if the mix had been better. But there you go. So I am, I'm giving it a big cross in that respect, but I would see them again. Well, I think I would.
Well, I mean, the good news is they seem to come to New Zealand about once a year, don't they?
That's right.
So give them a go next time.
Yeah, I reckon. No, I think you would enjoy it.
Then next time I'll go.
Very good.
Yo.
Right, so Steve is taking a wee break and Debbie is joining us again. Hi, Debbie.
Hi, Simon.
Nice to have you back. Now, the reason you're here today is not to talk about young people's pop music.
Right.
Which is your
it's just pop music.
I know. I'm just being silly. It's your niche on Crave, though.
Right.
This is an interesting topic. We're talking about a film called The Goldfinch.
Right.
I've done a little bit of quick reading about it, so I know that it came out as a book not that long ago.
A few years ago.
Yeah.
2013?
Something like that?
Yeah.
I guess that's, when you get to my age, that's not long.
Okay.
Was well received, wasn't it?
I won a Pulitzer Prize, so yeah, and on bestseller list.
Yeah, so it was a well received book.
Right.
It's just been turned into a film, and The Goldfinch has, at least on the level that if you can judge a film by its box office return, not done well at all.
That is correct.
And certainly some critics have been pretty harsh on it. But what did you think about it?
I really loved the movie.
Okay.
And I was really scared to see the movie because I loved the book so much. And, oftentimes when you love a book and you see the movie, you're very disappointed. I've had at least one instance in my life where it basically ruined the book for me. It was horrible. It was such a bad movie. I won't go into that. But no, so I was really nervous about seeing it. But my daughter really, really wanted to. She also read the book and loved it. And she really wanted to see the movie. So, all right, I'll go with you.
Mm-hmm.
It was wonderful. I loved it. Now, I'm coming at it from someone who read and loved the book.
Yes.
So it was hard to transcend that while I was watching the movie. But I thought to myself, now, what would somebody think if they hadn't read the book?
Right.
It was a very long book. I think it was Kindle had it at an 18-hour read. So it was a nice long book.
Can I just ask you, just for people who are not familiar with the story, I've seen it described as a coming of age story about a young man, and just basically what's the premise of the idea of the story?
So, and this isn't a spoiler obviously, but a young boy who I think he's 12 or 13, he and his mother go to a museum while he's on his way to his school to meet with the principal about an issue. Mm-hmm. So there's a little bit of tension between him and his mother at the time. Anyway, so they stop at the museum first because they're early, and a bomb explodes in the museum and kills his mother. He survives, along with another person that we know that we come to know in the book.
Yes.
Whom he doesn't know at the time. So it's really about him and this painting that he takes with him from the museum. Again, that's not a spoiler. That's really, early on. It's in the trailer as well. So, and it's the name of the book. So Goldfinch is the name of the painting. So it's really about him and this painting and the part that it plays in his life as well. It's really hard to describe how the painting plays a part in his life, but it does. And it doesn't really, you don't really realize that as much until the end of the book. So the last quarter of the book is very quick, and a lot of things happen with him in the painting in the end of the book.
Right.
So so it's definitely a coming of age book. The character is very well developed. So I think some of the things people had a problem with in the movie was his character came across as kind of dull in the movie. But that's really kind of what he was like in the book. And that was part of the book.
Yeah.
He had a rich inner life kind of in the book. So it was it might have been hard to
translate that into
a film.
Yeah.
So having read the book, I was unable to transcend knowing.
Yes, it's hard to unknow something. Yes.
Yeah. So that was hard. There was a long section of the book that takes place in Las Vegas. And there's a real mood about that whole section of the book. It's very long. It brings in another main character at that point, and not a lot of really specific stuff happen. There's a couple of very specific things that happen in Las Vegas, but there's a lot of mood stuff that goes on, and some character development. And they skipped over a really big part of that in the movie. But on the other hand, I do believe that in the movie they set the mood of Las Vegas so well that I thought that was fine. I didn't miss it being that, because in the book it was quite a long section.
Is it a long film, particularly?
No, it's not particularly long. I don't remember what the time on it is, but it's not particularly
didn't feel like it was hours and hours.
No, not at all. Not at all. It actually felt pretty quick because I felt like it moved along quite nicely.
Yeah.
The book did feel long.
Yeah.
And you really did feel like it was a long book.
Yes.
It wasn't just a long book. It felt like it. And that section in Las Vegas felt very long, but good. But it really set this mood. And I thought the movie did that actually really well. I think because it was visual, obviously, in a movie, that they were able to set that mood well through visuals that obviously you couldn't do in the book. So I thought that worked really well. And I thought that the casting was brilliant. I was really nervous about the casting.
Obviously, the role of the young boy has to be it's a pivotal role, isn't it?
Yeah. But more pivotal to me is the other main character in the book.
Okay.
And I thought that the casting of both the young, can I use names?
I think you can.
Spoiler. The young Boris.
Yes.
And then the adult Boris.
Right.
They did great. I was very nervous about that because he was really my favorite character in the book, even though he wasn't the main character. He wasn't Theo, which is the main character, the boy.
So why do you think? I was just having a quick look at some of the criticism, and those who didn't like it felt that they didn't handle the source material. But some people said it was. Rolling Stone said it was adapting a notes version of the book instead of the book itself, and playing.
Well, that was always going to be the case.
An unplayable series of scene snippets. Well,
I don't think that was the case, but it was always going to have to be short. I mean, they could have opted maybe to make it into a 7-part miniseries,
right?
An hour each, and maybe a 7-hour movie. That I think that would have worked really well. So that was one of the things I was nervous about when I went to see the film. I thought, how are they going to take this brilliant, really big, long, dense, amazing book and fit it into an hour and a half or whatever it was? But I felt like they did it. Like I said, they but they condensed a lot of Las Vegas stuff and did it more through mood and.
Well, I guess it's one of those ones where if you're aware of the story of the book, you'll have a different experience, I guess, than, as you said, someone watching it for the very first time.
Well, the two ladies next to me.
Yes.
So. One thing of interest, I think, to notice that it was only playing in either Newmarket or Howick.
Yeah.
I imagine that's still true. That was all we could find.
Yeah.
We went to see it in Howick in a small theater, and there were two ladies, older ladies, probably in their 70s, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Sitting next to me. My daughter was on my other side. And I heard them talking to each other just a little bit throughout the movie, here and there. And so as soon as the movie was over, I immediately turned to the woman next to me and I said, "What did you think of the film?" Mm-hmm. She said, "I loved it." And we spoke about it very briefly.
Yes.
And I said, "Did you read the book?" And she said, "I got halfway through the book and wasn't able to finish it because it does kind of get a little bogged down in the middle." I do admit that, even though it's a brilliant book. She said, "Now I'm going to go back and read the rest of the book."
That's interesting.
So then I asked her companion, "What did you think?" And she said, "Oh, I loved it." And I said, "Did you read the book as well?" And she said, "No, I didn't read the book." So there's...
Oh, that's a quite good cross-section of views.
Yeah,
that's everything.
That's my scientific study right there. I'd love to see what my mom would think of the movie. She didn't go with us because she didn't want to travel to Howick, but she read the entire book.
Oh, okay.
And really didn't like it.
Oh,
so she would have been quite interesting.
That would have been interesting.
Wish I had taken her with me because I would love to see what she thought of the movie. Because I've heard from other people. I have another friend who read the book or tried to read the book twice, only got about halfway through and just couldn't finish it. And she was a English literature teacher, so I would love to see what she would think of the movie.
Yes,
she wanted to love the book.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, so I would love to see what she would think of the movie. I think that would be really telling. But
I think one of the most interesting things about just hearing you talk about that is that it's that lesson about not allowing yourself to be swayed completely by what other people think,
right,
and being able to go along to something and have your own view, and there's enjoyment to be had in all manner of forms of art, and just because one other person doesn't like it, well, that's their opinion.
So what I would recommend to our viewers is, if you're up for it, read the book. It's amazing.
Right.
I would say that the movie is a beautiful companion to the book.
Right.
It made me almost love the book more, which is unusual.
Yeah.
That's so strange. But if you haven't read the book, I still suggest you see the movie, and then let us know what you think.
Yeah, it'd be great to hear some other people's views.
Yeah, I would really like to see what our viewers would have thought of the movie, whether or not they've read the book, whether or not they liked the book. Because it was like one of those Marmite books. You either loved it or hated it. Because I've heard of other people who said they just didn't like it, but heard from quite a few people who loved it. And the people who loved it. Really, and are passionate about it. I'm going to get myself a t-shirt that says Theo and Boris. I just love that book, and I love the movie. In fact, I'll probably see the movie again.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, I'll probably wait until it comes out on DVD.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
So that's the Goldfinch.
Yes.
Fantastic. Debbie, thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, Simon.
Cheers.
Right then.
Okay. All right, so that was the Goldfinch. Debbie's left us, Steve's back, and the game of musical chairs continues.
Absolutely. So it sounds like I've got a film to go and see.
It sounds like I've got a film to go and see.
You're on,
The Goldfinch. I hope it's still on for a little bit. But as Debbie was saying, when it comes back, on a Blu-ray or whatever, it'll be picked up by Netflix or somebody, and we'll get a chance to see it if we miss it at the cinema.
Well, apparently it's very easy to miss at the cinema.
As she was saying.
Yes.
Yeah. So look, this is Steve. I noted as you do, you keep us all up to date on cravepodcast.com with announcements of tours and so forth. But actually, the big news in the last little while has been a tour that was meant to be, but no longer.
It's an unannouncement.
Yes.
So the big news that we had earlier in the year was that Metallica were coming to town with Slipknot in tow as support, and then just not long ago, about a week or so ago, we got the news that band member James Hetfield has checked into rehab. Now, there was almost immediately on social media people whinging on about how it's terrible, that he's not, they're letting the fans down. But you know what? If the guy's not well, the guy's not well. And just because it's rehab and not like an exploded appendix or something, he's getting grief for it. No, if he needs to get himself sorted, he needs to get himself sorted. And who knows, they'll come back better than ever next year.
Yeah.
We'll hope so.
Yeah.
So that's the announcement. There's very, very little actually coming out in terms of music.
Yes.
But we have films coming, don't we?
We do. And we were talking about Joker earlier on, which is, kind of a pulp fiction story, isn't it? And there's another one coming up very soon with a bit of a history to it, a sci-fi. I think you could say the first one or two were regarded as classics of their type. And this is the Terminator series, fallen into disrepute in more recent times.
Well, we'll drag down into disrepute, to be fair.
Despite the efforts of some quite big cast members in some of the more recent films, like Emilia Clarke from Game of Thrones and Christian Bale, but they just went off track somehow.
Yes.
And certainly lost box office appeal.
Yeah.
What's interesting about this latest one, I think it's called Dark Fate, not a very promising title, I have to say, is that they've reunited several people from the earlier and more successful versions of the film.
You see, this is a classic rock band trope, isn't it?
Isn't it? Yes.
You get the classic lineup back, and are they playing the original material?
Well, partially they probably are. So we've got, first of all, James Cameron, who directed the first two.
Right, yeah.
Is back as a producer this time.
Yeah.
I think the director is Miller. Is it Todd Miller from the Deadpool movies?
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
And Linda Hamilton, the first Sarah O'Connor, and Mr. Schwarzenegger. I'm not quite sure what role because Terminators, you presume, can't age, can they?
No.
So I don't know how they're going to quite figure out his role. But anyway...
maybe he's overdue for his 70,000 kill service.
Yeah. Oh, that's a nice line.
Proud of that one.
And the interesting thing about what's being done here, Steve, is that I remember you talking about that not that long ago. You'd been back to see this re-release at the cinema of the second Terminator film, Judgment Day.
This was Terminator 2 that came out in the late 80s, early 90s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And at the time, it was groundbreaking. It was a fantastic film. And I remember thinking, okay, I'll go along. I remember it being really good. I'll go along. I'll see if it's held up. And I remember at the start of it going, should I be here for this? And at the end of it going, yeah, okay, fair enough. Now I remember what the fuss was about.
Yes.
Yeah, it held up well. And I think the reason was that in a lot of the later films, what is Terminator about? It's about robots that kill people, right? So they have lots of robots killing lots of people, and that was it. And the thing that made Terminator 2 Judgment Day good was it wasn't really just about robots killing people. I mean, robots did kill people, don't get me wrong. That did happen. Yes. And they killed them in quite extravagant and fancy ways. But there was character. Do you remember there was... like you say, there was...
Well, that film was... first of all, they flipped the Arnold Schwarzenegger character. He was a bad robot in the first one. Yes. He was a good one in this.
Yes, he was.
And he has this relationship with the young John O'Connor.
That's the name, yes.
Famously played back then by, who was very young then, an actor called Edward Furlong.
Yes.
And so that relationship was a big part of the film.
That was the centre of the film. That was the heart of the film.
Yeah.
It had an emotional heart.
Yes.
So you cared about the relationship between... Yeah. And he wasn't just a person killing robots.
Yes.
He somehow... And I can't believe I'm saying this about Arnold Schwarzenegger. he somehow managed to play a robot with a heart. And that's how astonishing it was.
Yes.
And yet somehow they managed to do that alongside the robots killing people stuff.
Yes,
and you still had the great big smashy bangy helicopters flying into buildings and exploding ending.
Yeah. I can still remember the end of that film.
Yeah. Quite spectacular.
And it was emotional.
The very, very, very end, yes.
It really was. You felt, oh, there's something that's actually going on here.
About a robot.
Played
by Arnold Schwarzenegger. So it's astonishing. And so after that, like I say, they forgot...
So I can't stop laughing.
Yeah, they forgot that the film had this emotional pivot to it. No. And they let go of that, and it just became robots killing people.
So what they have done in this film...
Yeah.
Apparently, is forget about the 2 or 3 ones that have been done more recently.
Probably
and they've gone back to pick up the story at the end of Terminator 2 Judgment Day. That's what I understand has been done here. So they've disregarded the ones that didn't work. Said, look, audience, forget about those.
Yes.
Let's go back and pick that story up. At the end of the film, you did like.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
It's almost like they sort of beta tested the other storyline, decided it wasn't playing well, and went, no, we'll go back to the original one. And the funny thing is, if you look at like the well-known universes, like whether it's Harry Potter or it's Star Wars or it's Star Trek, any of those, the real fans, they get so fussed about, is this canon? Are we counting this as so when he had the thought of Throng or whatever it might have been, did he really have that because it was in this particular book? Does it count because it was only in the radio series? And they get so bent out of shape. Cameron's just gone, yeah, screw that.
Yeah.
It was on film, I filmed it to celluloid, but you know what? Nah, none of that counts. That's a bizarre thing to do.
It is in a way. But yeah, you're right. It's just like we just want to do this again and try and do it better. That's almost what they're saying. Having said all that, you were commenting yourself earlier that the trailer
looks like there's an awful lot of robots killing people.
Yeah, and I hope there's more to it than that. There better be. Otherwise, it'll fall down the same trap that the previous ones have done.
Well, again, yeah. If they've realised that that's why the original ones, the original sequels, stumbled and fell. If they realise it's because you need to have some kind of emotional heft as well.
Yes.
If they remember that, one of the good things. But I saw the trailer for this directly before I saw Joker.
Oh, okay.
And I remember thinking to myself, no,
I think the trailer doesn't bode well, I have to say.
No, and I hope it's one of those cases where the trailer isn't the film.
Well, and that is often the case.
It is. We've talked about this a lot, haven't we?
Yeah. So I will see it because I'm curious to know with the returning elements from the earlier films, just how they try and take the story on. So I'll see it, and we can maybe talk about it next time.
Absolutely.
All right then. Well, that's a good yarn. So we'll be interested to know what you might have to say about the Joker, about the Goldfinch, whether you agree with Debbie or not.
Yep.
The critics didn't agree with Debbie, but that's good.
But what would they know?
What would they know? So look, thank you very much for listening, for watching. If you want to get in touch with us, we'd love to hear from you. You can drop us a line on podcast@cravepodcast.com.
We're all over the social medias because that's what the cool kids do these days. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram @Crave Podcast.
Fantastic. So I'm Simon Mercer.
I'm Steve McCabe.
You say it, go on.
And that is what's been entertaining all of us this week.
Lovely.
Right, that wasn't bad.